exciting content in this chapter. Since I assume most people take 425, it's kind of just a repeat.
I hope it is. Really
so as we'll just kind of go through these, I'll kind of flip through the book, see if there's anything I missed in my notes. But it kind of starts off, this whole chapter is about the impact of information technology through the audit process for those of you who haven't got a chance to look over it yet. So we'll start off with the benefits of internal controls with the integration of IT and accounting systems. So first benefit, computer controls replace manual controls, which allows us to handle large amounts of complex business transactions more cost effectively. And the second benefit is higher quality information is available. So IT activities are usually administered effectively because the complexity requires effective organization, procedures, and documentation. So those are the two overarching benefits of IT integration with accounting systems.
So what is integration of internal control and accounting systems?
So it means like where there used to be like manual processes of checks and procedures that the computer does it automatically for. So if you input an amount, it bounces it against the database that says this item should have sold for $10, but it says $100, so it'll automatically correct that.
Yeah. So you can design all sorts of things to stop you from making common mistakes, right?
Yep.
The only problem is, of course, if you don't program the computer properly, it will cause you to make the same mistakes over and over and over. So the obvious power is it'll stop you from making a lot of mistakes. It'll correct your mistakes. It'll keep you within ranges of what a customer can buy credit. It's all kinds of stuff. It'll be great. How much a check, how big a check could be, before there's a review of some kind, whatever. It's a real customer, it's a real vendor, real employee. But it'll also make the same mistake over and over and over for you if you program it improperly. And that's the key thing to keep in mind. So it's really important to check out their system, of course, and make sure their system. By the way, can somebody design the system to perpetrate a fraud? So, yeah, absolutely. Get in fraud for it. You get that. There's some famous cases where people have done that. Yeah. So this is good stuff. Yeah.
All right. So the next thing we'll talk about is the risks of IT systems. So there's three main risks: risk of hardware and data, reduced audit trail, and then a need for IT experience and separation of IT duties. So further in depth on risk of hardware and data, reliance on functioning capabilities of hardware and software. It is critical to physically protect hardware, software, and related data from physical damage that might result from inappropriate use, sabotage, or environmental damage. So we've talked about this before. Like if you have like a big database, most companies have them backed up in different sites, different passcodes and stuff to get into those databases, since those have all of your private company information. And then restrictions on who can access different parts of the database would be the inappropriate use part there. So
it's nice if everybody has access to the data, obviously. Not so hot if everybody can change the data.
yeah.
So you can put the right controls for that. Nowadays it's kind of interesting that people come in and potential damage to their data, viruses and so on. More and more of that, right? So you've got to be more and more careful. Almost impossible to be careful. What's happened to major companies losing their data sets, losing your customer base, information.
And this one also kind of relates to like internal controls, because not everyone should be able to access the same information. Obviously, your higher ups in different departments should have access to different information. So maybe an accounting department can access a lot more data than say like the HR department or something like that. So kind of ties into internal controls there as well.
Kind of a need-to-know basis, right?
Yep.
The information you use, you can access it. If not, you should be designing the systems you can.
Yep.
And really that's automatic segregation of duties, right? If you think about it.
The two, systematic versus random errors. So we kind of talked about this earlier. Keith was mentioning it. Systematic errors result in large number of incorrect entries. So the price is supposed to be $10, but the system thinks it's $100 every time something comes in at $10 or $100 is going to get switched to 10. So rather than a few random errors that are hard to catch, now we've changed every single entry that's coming through the system. So you can be a lot further off, but those errors should be easier to catch during an audit because
that chapter will look at different ways of estimating the error, right? What you think might have happened in different estimations, for instance. You know, so if you think you might have a systematic error, you're looking for about the same error on a whole bunch of different transactions, right? So various ways to estimate. So it ties right back into this.
Then we already covered the unauthorized access, whether it's someone losing their laptop or someone hacking into your system with all your information stored in one place. If someone gets the legitimate access, they can, get a lot more than everything on paper and take them a lot longer to go through it. So we kind of covered that. And loss of data, we covered that as well. Loss of other data files, that can be very detrimental to a company if you lose all of your accounts payable for the year or something like that. It can really throw off your financial reporting.
Grandfather backups, right? Backup, and protect it.
And that's especially true in auditing as well. Always save your work papers, because auditing programs have a tendency to crash. I can tell you that.
You notice that.
You do a whole bunch of, tests of transactions or something, and your Excel freezes on you, and you have to reboot your computer. Now you've got to redo the last 4 hours of work. So we kind of always it's kind of one of those things. Once you finish the process, hit save, and then go on to your next transaction or something like that. A lot of times computers will automatically save for you these days, but it's very upsetting.
Amazing though. What firm are you with?
PwC.
Yeah, PwC. Wouldn't you think that PwC could have their audit software set up so that it would automatically back up every single time? And maybe do a continuous automatic backup so it's just there?
Yeah, it does every so many minutes, but if you get in that time,
you could still lose
stuff.
It's still frustrating even if you're doing that, but the capability is there.
Yeah.
And they certainly have the wealth, but it's amazing how it just takes us a long time, and they're obviously a good firm, big firm, rich firm. It just takes a while for things to happen. And then human beings can always overwrite it and screw it up, which we're really good at doing that. So, yeah.
It's also important when you're on client computers. So whenever you're going through and testing transactions, like we've talked to, walking through the processes, client computers are never generally as fast and as yours are. You normally get stuck with the crap old computer that someone retired is the one that you're using to walk through their system. And so that was one of the worst parts, definitely.
I never thought about that. That's pretty cool.
Getting on a client computer.
Yeah. So you used to always get the worst room to work in. They think they're going to get rid of you faster if they make you miserable, so they make it as uncomfortable as possible. Probably the reverse is true. In life, companies push you to really nice facilities, make you comfortable so that you get your work done. Get out of there. You can do the work either way. But that's funny, they give you the crummy computer too to make your watch.
Next part is reduced audit trail. So visibility of audit trail reduces source documents and records. So the more functions that the computer performs, the smaller areas where you can see all the different audit trail results, and we talked about that previous in this class.
I learned about that really early in my career when an illustrative story for you. We brought in a computer, it was a floppy disk computer, only they're called floppy disks because they're really floppy. Have you guys ever seen a floppy disk?
Seen a floppy
disk. They don't have those anymore, right? The solid little disk, right? They're now obsolete. Now you use a flash drive for now. Right, and that'll be obsolete too, of course. Most things we just do online now. But anyway, so yeah, this is a desk. It's the size of an office desk, and the CPU took up most of the desk. And I don't know, it had far less capacity than my phone does, of course. Oh God, infinitely less capacity than my phone does. But anyway, so I hired a software out there because we wanted software to work for us as the client program. They weren't very many before the Microsoft days, of course. And so we're having them write programs to process our data. And what I did was I showed them all the input data, and I showed them what I wanted as the output reports, and they did it for me. And there was nothing in between. The other thing was you had to input all the data perfectly before we processed the report. If you made a mistake, you had to start over. And I'm like, well, what the hell? What did you guys do? So I got the first couple of programs, and I'm trying to use them. This is ridiculous. What did you do? So you didn't say you needed that. If you input everything perfectly, it comes out on the other end perfect. I did exactly what you asked me to do. We're going to charge you more to do anything else. And I says, well, actually, you're not going to charge me anything because I'm not going to pay you anything. Right? So don't worry about it. You guys can leave and I'll find somebody else to do it, and then they fix it. And we ended up paying them more. Yeah, but not as much as we thought we were going to. But yeah, you can have anywhere from nothing to really good audit trails. So when you're designing these systems, what do you need to do? When you get done with, if you go into public accounting, it'll already be done, right? You'll be looking at it, talking about how to improve it, and your firm will have systems for doing that. But when you go out into a corporation, what do you need to do? Make sure they build this stuff right. And you're going to be responsible for this, you guys. You're going to be working with the IT people to make this happen. And they can do anything you want them to do. You just need to know what you want them to do. And they don't know, typically they won't know very much about it. Depends how big the company is. They have IT people who are also accountants, which makes it really valuable, by the way, if you're IT and accounting both, right? If you're an IT person who has accounting or an accounting person who has IT, you can communicate between the two. Because have you tried this? Anybody have friends that are IT folks? Right? It's tough, isn't it? Right? They don't speak the same language we do. Really. So I don't know how a person gets so he can speak both languages, but it's a real valuable skill. So work on this. Yeah.
So the next one, reduced human involvement unless able to identify processing the statements. So if the computer's doing all the processing and it's continually making the same error, it's kind of harder to identify that than if you've got a human and you go observe and you can see, okay, they're doing this wrong. That's pretty easy to identify. But when you have to sit there and step by step what a system's doing, it can be a lot more complex. It takes a lot more in-depth knowledge of IT than just observing someone counting something or something.
That goes
like
back to systematic versus random. People don't, unless they're poorly trained, people don't make systematic errors. People make random errors, but they'll make them. Computer will rarely make random errors if they can, but it rarely does. It'll make systematic if it's poorly programmed. So, different thing.
All right, last one, lack of traditional authorization. So this one kind of goes both ways. So the book talks about how IT systems often generate transactions automatically. So like purchasing inventory, when your system, record and says, okay, we're down to 100 items, you may have that, automatically set up to order that from your vendor. So you're not really having authorization there because the system's automatically doing that. Then you can also, set up an IT system where if you're going to post an entry to the ledger, maybe the controller or somebody has to approve that before it's actually posted. So you can kind of go both ways. The authorization, I think you can have really increase, but then there are situations where it's going to be decreased as well.
It's kind of fun with automatic signatures. For this little tiny nonprofit that I'm messing with, the operations director had a whole bunch of letters written with my name on them, ready to send out when I came in yesterday. And luckily I was talking to him about, well, we really don't want me to send it to a board member to do it, and it's asking for money. So we're going to have a couple of board members sign instead of me. And he says, oh, they're in the mailroom. I've never seen a letter in my life with my name is at the bottom of it. Because he has my signature requested. Right? So this is real, you guys. And you think about check signing in the old days, it was signed by hand. Then it was signed with a stamp. Right? But you had to control that stamp. Really important. You had to save it. Now it's in the computer. The signature goes on the check. The check gets cashed. If two signatures go on the check, you require two, but you have the computer put both of them in, you get access to that stuff. You can take all the money out of the company you want, right? Really fast. So is this better control or worse control using IT? I don't know. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. Some ways a lot better. Some ways kind of scary. Yeah.
Need for IT experience and separation of IT duties. So reduce separation of duties. If computers generally do many duties that were traditionally segregated. So we kind of referenced that already earlier too, but if the computer's doing all of the, test controls or something like that, or processing the entire transaction that used to be separated, but it's not anymore. But at the same time, the computer can separate duties where multiple steps of approval or something like that we talked about. And the last one, need for IT experience, as we talked about. Also, IT is complicated, so you've got to have people internally, or you've got to pay someone externally to come in and make sure that everything's working properly and doing everything that you need to do. And then also from the auditor standpoint, the auditors have to be able to understand an IT. So that's why a lot of firms hire not only accountants, but they also hire a lot of people with the IT background to go in and assist in the audits. So,
Any of you guys have an IT background? We're developing one as we speak. A little bit. Here we go.
So next, there's two categories of controls: general controls and application controls. So general controls apply to all aspects of IT functions.
When you do get questions on this, on the information in this chapter, it's a lot of this stuff.
So there's 6 different types of general controls that we've got listed here. Administration of IT functions, the board of directors and senior management, attitude about IT affects the perceived importance of IT within the organization. That's self-explanatory. Separation of IT duties, the responsibility of programming, operations, and data control are separated. So those are like the 3 major functions of IT, are those programming, operations, and data controls.
The chart at the bottom of page 373 has this stuff in it.
Yep. And it's literally, I took this straight out of this chart.
Yeah. I know this stuff pretty well. Yeah. What do you separate?
Programming, operations, and data controls. So
programming. Why do you think about why?
Programming.
You don't have to remember this, it's just common sense.
Programming would be developing the system, writing the code to run the report, something like that. Then operations is the person that's using that information. And then data controls are people that are making sure that it's correct. So if one person was programming it, using it, and making sure the controls are correct, then they're affecting the whole thing, so they could easily get away with fraud in that situation.
What do we separate in separation of internal control, in separation of duties under internal control? What do you separate? Just in general, not IT, but in general.
Functionality of it, developing functionality, the using of it, and the making sure the checks and balances.
Well, one's checks and balances we call monitoring. What are they?
Regular
internal control we just did over and over. Okay, record keeping, right? Recordings, authorization, custody, and monitoring, right? Okay. So tie them into these. They only have 3 of them here. They don't have custody up there, right? Although we still do that. Access to the computer, you could add it if you felt like it, right? Access to a particular program at all. But programming, right, is kind of an authorization type thing, right? Operating is kind of the record keeping, and data controls is kind of the monitoring. So you can tie them together. That makes sense, guys? It's basically the same stuff. At least I think it is.
So system development, the teams of users, system analysts, and programmers develop and thoroughly test the software. So whenever you're coming up with a new program or something like that, it's just saying that you have to thoroughly vet it and make sure that it's working properly. So I know like where I work right now, we have like a test environment. So like if you go to our intranet, you can test, like you can use everything, but then when the system's being developed, it's in like, you have like a different couple characters that you put in the, internet bar, and it looks exactly the same, but it's the complete test environment, so it's not changing any real records, and so it'll go through like a month of that before it's actually deployed to make sure that it's functioning properly before it gets out there. So that's that one. Physical and online security, so access to hardware is restricted, passwords and user IDs limit access to software and data files, encryption and firewalls, protect data programs from external parties. So, I know this is a big one. I forget how much our head IT guy says. We get like 300 million hits a day on our firewall at work. And a lot of those are just, automatic computers. Just, if they see an IP address come across and they're just hitting it. So that's a big one. And then also like the encryption. When I was working at PwC, if you put anything on a flash drive, that flash drive was encrypted with like a 14-digit password. And like files that you send, like you send a file over an email, you had to encrypt that file before you send it as well. So that's a really big one. We've seen the whole thing with Apple. If anyone's paid attention to the news lately. So the encryption can. So physical security, encryption, all that stuff. Backup and contingency plan, I talked on this earlier. So you need to have written backup plans that are prepared and tested regularly. So whether that's having your database in 3 different locations, you got to make sure those locations are up and running. If your system were to fail, you can't just have like the backup system somewhere and then your system fails and oh, the batteries are dead in the generator, or there's no gas in the generator, or something like that. And then hardware controls, memory failure and hard drive failure causes error messages on the monitors. So this kind of was talking about like if your computer were to crash while you're in the middle of a report. So just self-explanatory. The second big category here is application of control. So they typically operate at the business process level and apply to processing transactions such as controls over the processing of sales or cash receipts. So there's 3 different pieces here: input controls, processing controls, and output controls. Input controls designed to ensure that the information entered into the computer is authorized, accurate, and complete. Processing controls prevent and detect errors while transactions are processed. And output controls focus on detecting errors after processing is completed rather than preventing errors. So the title kind of explains those, and we've talked about those in more depth as well. But
there are lots of things you can do in these areas. I'll give you examples of them. But, for input controls, you have the screen come up and you've got to put in a customer number. You put in a customer number, and if it's not a real customer, of course, no information comes up. But if it's a customer, it's a correct number, right? The information will come up, and then you still have to manually check that that's the customer if you want it, right, physically, just was the right number, the wrong, a customer number that's the wrong customer. You can still have a mistake, of course. But it keeps you from processing to customers that don't exist, or perhaps the wrong one, that sort of thing. And also you get the correct address and the correct spelling of the name and all that automatically. If you think about doing this by hand, compared to using a computer. And the same thing with employees or with vendors or, inventory items, you name it, right? Products need to be priced at the right price. You get the right customer in, right? And the right quantity in, and the price is going to be correct. In the right inventory item, the price is going to be correct. It's going to check your inventory records to make sure you've got it before you sell it. So all kinds of things that you can have in input controls. And then on the processing controls, if you're just trying to go over the credit limits for a customer and won't let you, right? That kind of thing is really nice. And, or if you're trying to process too big an order or too small an order, it's outside your reasonable range, whatever it is, okay, can be good. So keep you from writing payroll checks for $100 billion, right? Simple things. Yeah. So
we saw a lot of those when we did the online project for 425 last. Whenever you said 425, you could type, like he was saying, you type in the customer number, and then it pull in, the address and all that stuff. So that was pretty helpful. Saves you work too. So I guess we'll move down here to effects of general controls on control risk. So this, I believe, is like 379 if you're following along in the book. So auditors typically obtain information about general and application controls through the following ways. Interviews with IT personnel and key users. So talking to those people that design the controls and help develop the system to make sure they have a thorough understanding of like what the accounting process is and what it really should be doing. The examination of the system documentation such as flowcharts, user manuals, program, change requests, and system testing results. So once you've talked to those people and you know what they think it should be doing, now you're going in and making sure it is working, making sure that like requests are being processed at the right authorization, that they're testing their system and the results throughout the year, so that if there is one of those systematic errors, they're catching it, and simple stuff like that. And then reviews of detailed questionnaires completed by IT staff. So that's one of the interviews with the people that we talked about, the questionnaires that you don't necessarily go sit down and check off in front of them, but you're going to talk to multiple IT people to make sure one person doesn't have too much access and stuff like that, so that you're sure that the information is correct. So next thing here is talking about like auditing less complex IT environments. So these are like smaller companies that don't have real big, IT departments, or maybe they're outsourcing it or something like that, where you've got to be a little bit more careful. You can't trust the data as much. So
before you go on to that, think about they talk about the effects of IT controls on different types of testing. So what kind of testing do we have anyway? Test of what? Let me get into testing. Details. Test the details of transactions. Right? Yeah. That's one. What else do we have? Test of the ending balance, right? And those are both standard testing, really, right? Okay. And then what? Test the controls themselves. So if you have a really well-designed IT system, whatever the program area is, right? What are you going to need to do? It's really well designed, so what are you going to do? You think by design it's really good, what do you need to do with it? It all ties together. What do you think you need to do? You're going to rely upon that IT system, right?
That's the controls and run.
You think it's good, so you think you're going to reduce your substantive work. I can't reduce my substantive work unless I test my controls, right? So I'm going to test those controls. So you might use IT people to test the controls, right? First is either to design, for that matter, right? And then to test it, okay? Or you can use a audit software, right? Okay, you can talk about that, okay? So we do that, and then do you want to evaluate the result of that? You know, are the controls really as good as we thought they were? Sure, it's the same thing, okay? And what will that allow you to do? What's the impact? If they have a well-designed system and it's functioning well, you reduce your substantive testing, okay? So that's it. So you're going to be determining your sample sizes based on this, right? Same deal, okay? That's all it is.
So we'll jump back into the auditing less complex environments, and then we'll go to more complex environments so we can really contrast the differences between the two. So three really key terms here when we're talking about this: auditing around the computer and auditing through the computer. Should be self-explanatory, but auditing around the computer, auditing without relying on the test, and testing automated controls embedded in the computer application. So here we're saying it's not, the computer controls aren't trustworthy, so we're going to do less testing controls and a lot more substantive testing, since we don't think you can rely on it. And then auditing through the computer, auditing by testing automated internal controls and account balances electronically, generally because effective general controls exist. So here, we're going to trust the data more, so we're going to hopefully reduce substantive testing by increasing tested controls because they have a better IT environment. So
It'd be much cheaper on.
yep. Next key point is that testing in more complex environments. So there's three.
How do you suppose you do this auditing through the computer or around the computer? Yes. How do you think you do that? Kind of interesting. Auditing through. Auditing around. You gotta talk about it. Not really practical. Why not? Too many transactions. That horrendous stuff on the computer. What's that? That's on the computer anyway. Well, you have the input to the computer and the output from the computer in any environment. You still have that, of course, right? But imagine what that would be like. So if it's in a real small business, maybe you end up in a situation like that, maybe. But if it's any size whatsoever, that's just not going to work, right? Okay, but what would you have to actually do? I mean, you alluded to it. Probably a whole bunch of substantive tests on those ending balances, right? Because you can do that without auditing through the computer. Because you're not going to rely upon the controls that the computer has, right? And the processing that the computer did. So it's kind of common sense, right? But you don't see very much auditing around the computer anymore. In the early days of computers, CPAs would audit around the computer because they didn't know what the computer was doing and they didn't understand it. It's extremely ineffective. And as the computers got sort of faster and faster and had more and more transactions, and there's less and less transparency in terms of being able to see what's going on in there, you've got to audit through the computer using the computer. So you've got a variety of ways to do that.
Right. So more complex environments, there's three different types of approaches that we can take here. So the test data approach, auditors process their own test data using the client's computer system and application programs to determine whether the automated controls are processing the data correctly. Test data should include all relevant conditions that the auditor wants to test. Application programs tested by the auditor's test data must be the same as those the clients use, and the test data must be eliminated from the client's records after the completion of testing. So,
Or you might test it several times throughout the year if you don't trust that they use the same programs the whole time, or you know they didn't use the same programs the whole time, right? You can use it through a variety. Does this test data change the client's records?
no.
No. Make sure they have to set up where if you input data to track it, right? You're going to be running through their computer system.
Yeah.
You want to make sure you don't update their records with your test data. What a disaster. And in cases where that's happened, right? So be careful, obviously.
Kind of like what I was talking about earlier, a lot of companies have like little portals, like that's offline, so it's going to go through the same processing system, but it's not going to be real live information that's getting posted anywhere. That way you don't have a chance messing up their actual data.
You have to make sure that's exactly the same program.
Yes.
Yeah. If you're going to perpetuate the fraud, right, it'd be really easy with it. We have one program we use internally, right, that allows us to do the fraud, and we have one that we let the auditors use, right, to do their test data. Perfect. Works out with the right data, the answers correct for them, and we still are able to manipulate our statements. No problem. Right.
And then the next one is parallel simulation. So auditors often use auditor-controlled software to do the same operations that the client software does, using the same data files. So generalized audit software was the term they used in here, which is provides three advantages. Those three advantages is IT is relatively easy, like the generalized audit software. It is relatively easy to train the audit staff to use. The software can be applied to a wide variety of clients with minimal customization, and it has the ability to do audit tests much faster and with more detail than using traditional manual processes. So this is just saying, instead of inputting your new data into the client software, you're using your own software and you're taking the client data, and if your software processes it and you get the same information that the client did, then you know that the client system is working correctly.
It doesn't have to do it exactly the same way. You don't care.
As long as you get
You got the same input, you need the same output, right? And you just make sure you test it everywhere you need to. I mean, same as you said earlier, test all relevant conditions the auditor wants to be tested. You always do that on all these. So this is a really nice way to go. To apply to, like I said, a wide variety of clients. They could have different types of systems. Who cares?
Yeah. They said this is more commonly used in like smaller firms that have like a lot smaller clients. That way they don't have to learn like each individual IT system. You know, if the audit's only lasting a couple of weeks, they can go through there, put it through their system, knock it out since their auditors know it, and then they can move on to the next client. But when you've got big huge clients like Coca-Cola or something, you're going to be sitting there young, you're going to be sitting there year-round, so you're going to learn the client system at that point.
Actually, what you're going to do is you're going to rely far heavily on their internal control, aren't you? You're going to be auditing their system design a lot more than relying on the input and output or matching.
And then embedded audit module, a method of auditing transactions processed by IT, whereby the auditor embeds a module in the client's application software to identify transactions with characteristics that are of interest to the auditor. The auditor is then able to analyze these transactions on a real-time, continuous basis as the client transactions are processed. So this is saying that you add a piece of your own software into the client software, and when something special comes up, it flags it, and you're alerted, and you can review that and watch how it was processed and make sure that it was handled correctly for unique situations.
You can actually put a tag on a piece of information, a data, and flow it through their entire system to see where it goes and what it does. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. So kind of wrapping up the notes here, just a little bit more to go. So understanding internal controls and outsource systems. So this is when the IT is done by different companies. So this is generally in smaller companies. So auditing standards require that the auditors to consider the need to obtain an understanding and test the service center's control if the service center application involves processing significant financial data. So when you read this in the book, it talks about how the auditor used to not be required to go to that third-party site and test their controls there, but now the auditor is required to do that. So smaller clients, but generally use that.
Yeah. Actually, what happens is the service centers a lot of times will have, what is the service center? What are they doing here?
They're performing the IT functions.
Yeah, for a small company, you know, you have somebody do your payroll for you, right? You only got a few employees, you just send the information, they process the payroll, they give you the payroll checks, of course, you give them how many hours it is, whatever, pay scales, and then they process all of your quarterly reports, your W-2s and all that stuff, right? So it's a real effective way to go. There are people that will do this with financial statements, right? You give them your transactions and they put them in and out of your financial statements. The small CPA firms will provide these kinds of services too. What happens then is the service center will have an audit done on their internal controls, and you can rely upon their audit of the internal controls for your audit, right? So now you know how strong their controls are, how weak their controls are over a particular area. So it's kind of handy. And of course, they're providing the services for lots of customers, right? And so that one audit report then applies to a whole bunch of different customers, individual audits. Makes sense?
I believe it said in here, if you rely on like the test centers audit, you don't have to include that name in your. Because like in the auditor's report earlier, we talked about if you're relying on someone else's work, you have to like mention them in your.
Well, do you have to mention them?
If you don't.
There are three options for it. What did you do?
Not mention it, and you take all responsibility.
You could not mention take full responsibility, or you could mention there were other auditors and not mention their name, right? You still have full responsibility, but it's shared. It's the weirdest thing because you're still responsible for the full audit, right? Even though you relied on somebody else, but it's still shared responsibility because you mentioned there's another auditor. And what's the third process of it? You can mention their name. I've never seen anybody do that, right? Why would I give you free advertising, right? My CPA's name, firm name is on there, name, but I might mention there were other auditors.
Plus, you can't do that on a public company because
public company you can't anyway. Yeah,
can't have a clear opinion.
So, yeah, in private companies, you can do that.
So the last part of my notes here is really just talking about some of the different IT terms that I skipped over here in the last couple of pages. And we should pretty much already know these, but DMS or Database Management System is the hardware and software systems that allow clients to establish and maintain databases shared by multiple applications. Enterprise Resource Planning Systems, systems that integrate numerous aspects of an organization's activity into one accounting information system. So this is taking the HR, the payroll, all that and putting it into one system for itself, like to use. Firewall, system of hardware and software monitors that controls the flow of e-commerce communication by channeling all networks and communications through a control gateway. It's real important in today's age, as we've seen and talked about earlier. Encryption techniques, computer programs that change a standard message or data file into one that actually is coded, then decoded using the decryption program. That's a big thing we've seen with Apple lately, where the FBI wants to be able to decode all of its encryptions. That's really the first big case where we've seen the government wanting to step in and have access to everyone's private information that's been encrypted.
Real interesting.
I actually was updating my phone last night, and Apple put out a new update that has another level of encryption for all your backup files, because those aren't technically on your phone. So they actually just pushed out a new thing about that. So kind of all based on the same deal. Digital signatures, certificated that are certificated that are used to authenticate that validity of individuals and companies conducting business electronically. So kind of when you go through, this allows auditors to go through and see who did what, since there aren't always the precise steps that are broken out like there used to be. This kind of records who is doing what along the way, so auditors can see it, who authorized it. So that pretty much covers all my notes from the chapter. I don't know if there's anything from the chapter you want to cover, Keith. what we can do.
There are a couple things that I guess they're pretty basic. I'd say they're pretty basic, but that are somewhat tested on still, and I think they're almost becoming obsolete, but maybe not. Page 377. This is an auditing book, so it's behind the times on IT. They always are. On 377, that table 12.2. Examples of batch controls. Well, very few people do batch processing anymore, right? We do real-time online, update the records continuously, so these wouldn't apply. But if you do process in batch, and smaller companies still do, these are examples. You could have a financial total, which is a real total, just adding up a bunch of numbers. Input the day's sales invoices, real small company. Put in the day's sales invoices, and the computer adds up the total of the sales, right? And I manually by myself add it up to make sure it's the same total. Right? You know, it's the batch, right? So you have control to the batch. Hash total is summary of total codes from all records in a batch that do not represent a meaningful total. So it might be the invoice numbers. I add up all the invoice numbers. Well, that doesn't mean anything, right? But if you have the computer add up the invoice numbers and you add up the invoice numbers, and it's the same one, you probably input all the right invoice numbers. That's all, okay? And record count, same thing. How many invoices I put in, maybe, you know, and then the computer tells you how many invoices you put in. So know what a financial total, a hash total, and a record count is. Right? How you might use it. Not a very big deal. Over on page 378, you talked about some of these. I think the validation test. Table 12 at the top of 378. Yeah. Validation test. You know that the particular type of transactions are broken for processing because the code is processing a recent purchase match predetermined inventory code. So you know you're putting in a real inventory item. It's simple as that. Okay. Sequence test determines the data submitted for processing in the correct order. So if you want to have them come in a particular order, invoice order, employee order, whatever, right, the computer can check for you that it's in the appropriate sequence or not allow you to do it. So you don't skip it, right? And if you're, this would be an environment maybe where you're writing invoices by hand, right? You're out in the field and you got drivers that are delivering products and writing invoices. You know, how you set up is kind of primitive maybe, but nowadays of course you carry a handheld, right? You put it in your computer and have it printed out. But if you're still doing it manual, you know, this could be a really nice thing for making sure that you didn't skip any of their voided ones. You make sure the voided one gets in the system, that sort of thing. So it's good. Sequence test. Arithmetic accuracy test checks the accuracy of the process data. Does a sum of net pay plus withholdings equal gross pay for the entire payroll? So it's just checking that the calculations went in properly, right? So that's all. Data reasonableness determines whether data exceeds the pre-specified. I mentioned that you can't pay an employee $100 million, right, in a paycheck or something, right? It'll stop you. So that's all. Okay. Completeness determines that every field of record is being completed. So you put in all the data that you needed to. It tells you if you didn't. You know, pretty simple, huh? So those aren't bad, but useful. Okay. You will see. This one's pretty good too. Over on page 12, or table 12.5, page 384. Things you might use journalized outside for. So verifying extensions, footings. It will do it for you automatically. So what do we mean by generalized auto software, by the way? This is not the client system. This is
what I was talking about when you kind of have your own system that you run the data through.
Yeah. Yeah. Parallel
Just generalized auto software.
Okay. Yeah. We can use generalized auto software to do all sorts of things, and you guys will be, right? It'll pull their general ledger for you, right, into a worksheet that's their general ledger, right? And it's in their system. We don't have to go out and manually recreate their general ledger, right? You'll use your audit software to just go pull it out, okay? In fact, it can pull all kinds of samples for you out of their system, okay? So examples, verify extensions and footings. So the client has done extensions. What's an extension anyway? Inventory, for instance. Each inventory item, the quantity they've got, right, times the price of that item. quantity times cost is the total for that one, that's an extension. And then what would a footing be? They total them on, right? That's a footing, no kidding. So it'd be footing and cross footings, okay? Makes sense? So it'll do all this stuff for you automatically, it's really nice. So they give an example, footing accounts receivable, verify the accuracy of the client's computations, the calculating information. Examine records for quality, completeness, consistency, correctness. It can scan records for you. Look for things that are unusual. I want to find all the checks that are over a certain amount. It's that simple as that. Or I want to find all of them that are related to parties. I have a list of related parties. I tell my audit software who all the related parties are. It scans their entire accounting system, every document they ever did for the entire year. It finds every time that name shows up. Wow. Imagine doing this by hand instead. Okay. So it can really nice scanning. You know, transactions at the end of the year that they posted, right? You can find those that are above a certain scope or whatever you want to do. They made a bunch of journal entries at the end of quarters or at the end of the year, and you think they might be smoothing their income or manipulating their income somehow. You can have it identify all those for you and just boom, out comes the schedule. Right? So you're pulling all this stuff out of their data, and they have thousands and thousands or millions maybe of transactions sitting out there, and you go find the ones that you want this way. But this is just wonderful stuff. The audit software. And you guys got to use this on? You said you did? Yeah? Yeah. Okay. Don't quite know what you're doing when you're doing it at first. Yeah, so it's good to read about it. Okay, so anyway, so they select out a sample, sure. You know, so you use your random number generator, right? You use your stat program to come up with sample size, which we're going to look at how those programs are doing that when we do the statistics chapter, so you have an idea what's happening. And then we have our random number generator select what our sample is going to be, and then we have our which is all built into this generalized audit software, by the way, right? Statistic packages and certainly the random number generator would, and then it'll automatically go out and select the ones that you selected for you. Okay, go find them. Right. So anyway, and with less and less being in paper, all you're finding is electronic documents anyway. Right? Which is kind of a scary thing when you think about it, because you can really modify an electronic document easily. Before there were copies, it was hard to modify a printed document. But now it's real easy. It doesn't matter whether it's electronic in the computer or you're going to use a copier to make the thing. Because you can modify the copy to make it look like an original when it's not. It's really easy to have a copy. It used to be, oh, I have to have an original, I have to have an original. And we still want originals, don't we? Right? We want original documents. But you can make something look original. It's not original very easily with copies. My signature on those letters looks like my signature, you guys. It looks like I signed it. Because it is my signature, because I signed it. Right? Got it in the computer. So it's my signature, it's my scribble. Right? It's like mine. Nobody would necessarily know that I didn't sign it. Which is really nice for sending out a whole bunch of letters. It looks like you personally signed it when you did it. Of course, everybody knows that because nobody does. Right? There are very many of them. Right? So, okay. Anyway, so same sort of thing. These are all sort of along the same lines. All these different things that they suggested. Okay. Anyways, good. Did you talk about cloud computing?
No, that kind of seems self-explanatory to me, but we can.
You guys know about cloud computing? Of course you do, right? Use the cloud. Any internal control risk using cloud?
Absolutely.
Yeah, what's the problem?
You have a lot of control over it because more than likely you don't own the satellite or storing it in space.
Yeah.
So
I bet you don't. Yeah.
Unless you're maybe Apple or Microsoft or something.
Yeah, if you're one of those, they probably have theirs separated from everybody else's, so they have better internal control. And they lump everybody else's together because they don't care about their internal control as much.
Can't afford it.
Can't afford it. That's right. They probably set up one for you independently if you want it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if you want to pay for it. Your own cloud, I suppose. Yeah. So, what's our ability to control information that's out in the cloud? Minimal investment. Right? We know that, don't we? So what do you think about having all this stuff that they suggest putting out there? Let's have all our human resource information out there. Let's have all our customers' information. Let's put all our customers' credit card numbers out there. Like Target did. What happened to them? Pretty easy to hack. It's pretty easy to hack, and there's not really any excuse for having done that. You don't need to do that. Okay. Is it cheaper to have it out on the cloud than to store it yourself? Yeah, that's what you do. Is it faster to access if it's out there? Yeah. But is it dangerous? Yeah, so be careful what you do, right? Information that you don't care if anybody has access to, though, that you'd like the whole world to have access to, what do you think about that? Oh, yeah, get it out there. Things that you'd rather keep private? Be careful, right? Watch as the technology develops. So I guess it's pretty self-explanatory. Logical. Common sense. So what else do you want to do?
Well, I had some questions we can go over. The website called Quizlet. First, there's like a company out there that offers these flashcards for free. So you have a Quizlet account, you can just search my name, Marlene02, and there's 104 auditing term flashcards, 182 VC, Trans-7 FAR, and 260 for reg. So I mean, they're real easy. You can just hit flashcard mode on them when you're running on the treadmill or something, and you just click flip. So it's really good to review. And I've got some just for this chapter, so we can go.
And these are free.
Yep, they're free out there, so you don't even have to have like, I mean, Becker has their own. You can get an app, but if you're not paying for that, some of the other software, some of the other lessons don't have their own out there. But these are all up to date for this year that are out there. But I really only like one of these for chapter 12. This other one we can do too. But then I guess we can just do some of the auditing ones if we want to. But they'll link the answers. So, auditing without relying on testing automated controls embedded into computer application programs, which is acceptable when the auditor has access to readable source documents and can be reconciled to detailed listings of output when sufficient non-automated controls exist, would be
Auditing around.
oh, we got it. All right. Great job, Adam. Next one. Auditing by testing automated internal controls of account balances electronically, generally because effective internal controls exist. Let's see, we got another one, 2 for 2. All right, hardware and software systems that allow clients to establish, maintain databases shared by multiple applications. Boom, we got another winner here. See how easy this is? Next time you're just hanging out, do some flashcards. All right, electronic certificates that are used to authenticate the validity of individuals and companies conducting business electronically. Lauren's killing it. She must have read the chapter. All right. A method of auditing transactions processed by IT whereby the auditor embeds a module in the client's application software to identify transactions with characteristics that are of interest to the auditor. The auditor can analyze these transactions on a real-time, continuous basis as client transactions are processed. Embed the module. What? I think we got another winner.
Do you believe that? That was not a I can't believe they did that.
Well, this isn't the CPA.
No, I know.
This
We
is
don't
just a
know.
chapter.
We don't know this. CPA executive more.
All right, so computer programs that change a standard message or data file into one that is coded and decoded using a decryption program. Neat. All right, they threw that curveball there.
And they'll give you these with multiple choice too, of course.
Systems that integrate numerous aspects of an organization's activities into one accounting information system.
Enterprise resource.
Wow.
Wow.
ERP code right there. Accounting. Well, oh, I don't know what that one is. A system of hardware and software that monitors and controls the flow of e-commerce communications by changing all network.
Channeling. Yeah.
Oh, firewall. Oh, let me do that. By channeling all network connections through a control gateway. It is. I don't know why it says C full text. Firewall. Oh, no, that was firewall. I clicked the arrow. Sorry. All right. that relate to all parts T functions.
Unbelievable. This is what the questions are like on this job exam.
I was telling you, I was reading this,
kidding.
man.
They really are.
That's interesting one. All right. Computer programs used by auditors that provide data retrieval, data manipulation, and reporting capabilities specifically oriented to the needs of auditors. General audit software. This is what
You
we're
guys
talking
thought this
about.
wasn't a fun chapter. This is going to be fun. You already studied for the exam on this. Yeah. Very comprehensive.
11. Controls built into the computer equipment by the manufacturer to detect and report equipment failure. Oh, minus 1.1. Controls designed by an organization to ensure that the information to be processed by the computer is authorized, accurate, and complete. No, this was underneath application controls. There were 3 different types that we talked about. Yep. All right. Networks that connect computer equipment, data files, software, and peripheral equipment within a local area, such as a single building or a small cluster of buildings for intra-company use. What? What is that? I think that's spelled right. Yeah.
Yeah, area. Yeah.
Sorry, typed by somebody, not me. Because I'm taking credit for their work here, though.
That's all right.
Application controls done by people. Wow, that was hard. Hope Keith gets that mark.
You just give me this setup, yeah.
Controls designed to ensure that the computer-generated data are valid, accurate, complete, and distributed only to authorized personnel. Go on, all right. Audit testing approach that involves the auditor's use of audit software either purchased or programmed by the auditor to replace some part of the client's application system.
Replicate.
Replicate some part of that. So there were 3 types that we talked about. Simulation testing. Yeah. All right. The company's computer testing approach that involves operating the old and new systems simultaneously. Actually, the company I talked about this one. Yeah. I think I skipped over that though. Oh, no, I guess a company's computer testing approach that involves implementing a new system in just one part of the organization while maintaining an old system in the other part. Didn't really talk about pilot testing, so that's all explanatory.
That's real expensive. Well, you did talk about it in terms of whether they have to decide one that they're testing.
Yeah.
You're still using a real one, and there's another one that they're testing, and then you replace the real one with the new real one, I guess. Yeah. Pilot testing.
Control design to ensure that data input into the system and accurately and completely processed. So processing controls. All right, 3 more questions here. An organization that provides IT service for companies on an outsourcing basis. All right.
This is a great chapter.
A method of auditing an IT system that uses the auditor's test data to determine whether the client's computer programs correctly process valid and invalid transactions. So I was going to read this.
Questions and answers over.
Networks that connect computer equipment, database, software, and peripheral equipment that reside in many geographic locations, such as client offices located around the world.
Well,
Oh man, I did that again.
So what does LAN stand for and WAN stand for?
Local area.
Local and wide area.
Yeah. All right. So, yeah, a little early here. We can go over some just general audit questions. I mean, we can look at these other ones. These are more just like really easy definitions. So literally pretty similar to my notes. And they're also set up backwards. I don't know how to change this. So like, how do information technologies ensure or enhance internal controls? This first name, computer.
Like the
Click
that start with and then press turn.
Oh, this?
Yeah.
Oh, there we go. Oh, sweet. All right. How do information technologies enhance internal control? You didn't just see the answer. I'll give it to you. Fewer controls replace manual controls. Higher quality information is available. What are risks of information technology? Let's do it then at the beginning. So systematic errors is kind of the first one we talked about. And
Loss of data.
oh, there's three actually. Risk of hardware and data, reduced audit trail, and then need of IT experience. So my bad, there's three. So we got the first two.
Risk of hardware data or data loss to it too.
Yeah. What are the four types of risks to hardware and data? I don't think we talked about that. Reliance on oh no, I guess we did actually. My bad. Sorry. Why does IT increase detection risk? Oh, we didn't talk about this. Any takers? Join one.
well, like, I guess if you're, if you have a reliable IT system, then that would, I guess, reduce your, like, evidence needed, which would increase your detection risk,
I
right?
think your control risk was lower. Right? Your control risk is lower in the audit model. You can let your detection risk go up. You're relying on the controls more.
Yep.
Is that it?
Less availability of audit trail, lack of traditional authorization, reduced human involvement.
Why that didn't work.
I like targets.
I like our answer better.
There would have been multiple choice on tests, so.
All those two, I agree with that.
What are two types of controls?
It's the only one I answered and I got it wrong.
Good go. What is pilot testing? We've covered this.
Where you implement a new system and like have it, yeah, in one part.
Run them both is what you do. You run the data through both of them. Make sure you get the same output for a while before you replace the old.
When a new system is implemented in one part of the organization while other applications continue to rely on the old system. Parallel testing. It's like our fourth time on this one.
Yeah.
You know it.
Where you
Run it through and then compare your results.
Yeah.
The way they worded the question didn't quite fit that though. You think? The way they worded that question didn't quite fit that.
What is parallel testing?
Yeah, they implied that you were using the old system as part of your organization for doing part of your organization, not parallel testing.
What is the significance of physical controls? We might not get these exact, but we kind of talked about some areas of concern around physical control. There's like three things coming up: environment,
Sabotage.
and like unauthorized use of them.
Unauthorized access.
So unauthorized changes to programs, improper use of programs, and data files. What are examples of physical controls?
passwords and IP numbers.
Badges.
Yep.
There we go. Security.
What are examples? So I guess what kind of an example of online controls? So that's the ID password. What is a key element to backup contingency plans and storing files? It's kind of an odd question. I would say testing them to make sure they work, maybe. So that's weird.
We They talked about that.
Yep.
Like grandfather, great grandfather, but don't do it on the same computer system. You don't lose all of it at once. Yeah, I'm in situations where you do it.
So hardware controls, talked about one of these a lot. Starts with an F. Rhymes with fire and fire. Okay, whatever. Close enough. Built into the computer equipment by manufacturers to detect and report equipment failures. All right, not really what I was going for there. Input controls. This tests.
The customer number we can share to the customer.
Information being processed is authorized, accurate, and complete.
That was a nice example.
Yep.
See, there it is.
Oh, there's what Pete talked about. What is financial total, hash total, and record count? So, financial total is the total of all records in a batch. Hash
Meaningful, hash total, not meaningful, right?
Yeah.
It's nonsense, no. Record count.
So they count records.
I hope you get those questions. They won't be on my exams, but I don't know. I mean, the real exam.
Once you,
Texas Roadhouse still uses batches.
There you go. Yeah, every time I do that, every time I say, nobody does it. Or reversing entries, they still use that. Yeah, GE does reversing entries and a whole bunch of other people. Those little tiny companies still do it, but other stuff. So, yeah, it's through a batch thing,
so we said output controls don't focus on one thing, but they focus on something else.
The nice thing about batch, though, is you can correct errors before you make them. You process the batch. You can look at it before you update your records with what happens with online, real-time online. It's in there. The errors are out there, and now you got, of course, you can still fix them, right? But some people like batch for that reason.
So output controls focus on detecting errors rather than preventing errors. How do you audit the IT environments with less complexity?
Don't rely on them.
Around. Wow, you got the emphasis on the right word. I mean, I
Ever
think.
get the idea of around? Around is kind of you pretend that the IT system's not there, right? You take the input data and the output data and make sure the output data is correct based on the input data. That's it, right? So you're just sort of ignoring that the computer's in between. In a real simple system, it might be all right. It might be faster than trying to figure out if the system's doing what it should be doing.
Couple more here. Super exciting. How do you audit IT environments that are more complex? Ooh. Describe 3 steps to test data approach of auditing.
You can cover that.
There you go.
Test all relevant conditions.
Oh, that's right. Yes, you did.
Neat.
You can prove it.
Make sure you get your test data out of their real records.
So the same as the clients, get it out, and then it should include all relevant fields. So don't leave anything blank.
Article 1 test data must be eliminated from the client's records. Yeah, that's good. We talked about that.
Yep. So test data should include relevant conditions. Application programs and test data must be the same as the clients, and test data must be eliminated from client records. Describe the embedded audit module approach.
You already said it.
Someone who doesn't know what the word embed means.
That's it.
So, auditors insert an audit module in the client's application system to identify specific transactions. But the key to the embedded module is that's like something that like continually pops up to them. So anytime that transaction goes through, they get alerted about it right away.
By the way, your embedded audit modules stay in their application program. So within their application programs, you embed modules that they theoretically don't know about, at least the people who are operating the system don't.
Right.
And the systems people, the people who are designing and programming, are not supposed to, on a continuous basis, have access, right? Segregation duties. They don't have access to those application programs. So they don't know what you've embedded in there either, theoretically. So you embed these modules in there, and you know about them, and you're extracting information you want. So if somebody tries to circumvent the system, it's going to flag it for you and tell you about it. Get the idea here? Then if you lose the client later, or they rotate auditors or whatever, they're gone. Right? You take all your stuff out. Right? They don't know it's there. It doesn't change their records. Right? It's just out there doing auditing for you on a continuing basis. So you get exception reports. Right? Not problems. That's the idea.
I know from like accounts I work at right now, like the auditors have like access to go in and they can like write whatever they want, and our IT department doesn't really see it. They know that there's a module in there and that it's running properly with the system, but the auditors are putting in whatever they want to pull out.
Yeah.
We don't have any idea.
So that way we maintain our black box. Right? That's what we're doing.
All right.
Cool.
We did about 40 flashcards there and finished a couple minutes early.
Look at that. You can use all the time, even though you guys are putting your stuff away a half hour ago. That's pretty good. Impressive. You could be a college professor, too.
This was